Bench Opinions. Three idiots with amateur analysis.
Right. Welcome to another episode of Bench Opinions. It's the rugby episode this week. And as you can see, we are two again. This time we're missing Dominic Neal, who is in Croatia with his girlfriend and the girlfriend's family, drinking rakia.
He said it was rugby adjacent.
Okay. You know, when people make their own alcohol there in the bathtub, that's what he was drinking. And some nice Kruzovices.
Chivapchichi.
Yeah. Having a grand old time. He will be back next week. And that will be our last episode before we go to London for the World Test Championship, which we'll also be sending some content from. But today we'll be talking about rugby. You'll get one more episode this week. It's the What a Week episode, because we're going to be skipping football as the expertise that's currently on the couch just isn't there, you know. It's just not where we want it to be. So we're going to pass it by. In the What a Week episode, we briefly mention the Champions League final results. So tune in for that if you're interested. Klaus, lead us through some of the rugby that happened on the weekend.
Obviously, the rugby that we want to be talking about is not the Premiership. We want to be talking about the URC quarterfinals.
Yeah.
3 South African teams took part.
Yes.
All in individual games, so none of them knocking each other out. 2 of them have managed to get through.
2 managed to get through. Stormers faced Glasgow in Glasgow. Leinster played the Scarlets. Sharks played Munster, and the Bulls played Edinburgh.
Correct.
Nice. Let's maybe start with Leinster beating Scarlets. Probably
the most expected result of
Scarlets, to be fair, put up a little bit of a fight.
Yeah. I think Leinster was a bit surprised by that.
Yeah. So I think it still is Leinster's to lose. Because if they get their shit together, they're going to have home matches the whole way through, and they are the best team in the competition.
Yeah.
Prendergast had a very good game.
James Lowe had a very good game.
Yeah.
Geordie Barrett had a very good game. The whole backline essentially just pretty much firing.
Yeah. Probably just a step too far for Scarlets.
Yeah. That being said, the Scarlets played very well.
Yeah.
It's one of their better games this season from what I had seen. Costello really leading the pack. They're leading the whole team there quite nicely. But I think for them, awesome to have made it to the playoffs. I don't think much more was expected.
No.
So you got to just give them credit for getting there in the first place.
I think when you qualify 8th, you're always going to have a tough time progressing past the quarterfinals, because you're playing the first place team away from home. So unless they're going through a horrible dip in form, or you're really coming into like a golden age of form, you need a lot to go your way for that to really work out.
For sure. And especially when you look at this league in particular, or maybe just this season in particular. I mean, Leinster's only lost 2 games, I think it was. You know, so it's not like it's pretty even amongst the top 8. There's quite a discrepancy.
The first 2 teams at least, or maybe the first 3 are definitely in form and very good teams.
Correct, yeah.
Let's go to Bulls next. Bulls versus Edinburgh at Loftus in Pretoria.
Yeah, a little bit of a scary start there for the Bulls.
Edinburgh came out.
It didn't look like it went according to plan.
No.
Edinburgh was like, I think we need to strike early and fast. And that's exactly what they did.
Yeah.
And the Bulls were caught a bit on the back foot and had to then sort of fight their way back. But I think for me, the standout player in that team was Willie Leroux again.
Yeah.
The way
it's
that
amazing how he's still will always impact a game, regardless how old he is and whether he comes off the bench or whether he starts. I mean, I know Russie's said he's going to give him his 100th cap, but I mean,
if he plays like this, it's not just like a gimme. It's
as an impact player, you could see him play so much longer, and he's probably just unlucky that there's so much young talent coming through in his position. Otherwise, I mean, he could have probably gone to 105, 110 easily. Maybe he still will. Who knows?
Yeah, it's just the way that his defense, I think we can all agree, has always been questionable at times. You know, if he's the last man having to tackle anybody, not even a prop, just anybody on the field, he tends to sort of like give it the cold shoulder a little bit and like, oh, look, I made an attempt, but not really sort of commit.
Yeah.
But in terms of managing the back line and also just understanding your attack, where you need to be, how you need to, how you need to set up for the next phase of play. He's got an incredible rugby intellect, and that just showed itself again on the weekend with his positional play and also his passing play.
Yeah, and then Bulls did enough to go through to the semi-final.
How about that yellow card on Sebastian de Klerk? How did you feel about that? I thought it was a bit of a soft one.
Yeah, it's soft. It was soft. I don't know, but if something like that doesn't turn a game completely, I sort of let it. Bygones be bygones.
Yeah, no, fair enough. But the reason I'm upset about it is I have him in my fantasy team, and I got a lot of negative points on that. So it was unjustified.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if refereeing is going to cost a team proper still this tournament, because I think now it's going to get close. I mean, we're going to get into the semi-finals just now because there's some really good matchups coming in there. Let's go, though, next to my team, the Stormers. The Stormers played away to Glasgow, and I think depending on who you asked, it was pretty even. But in my view, Glasgow was favourites because they were playing at home, but they weren't really in form, so the Stormers had a chance. That's how I would have sort of drawn it up. But then, what the Stormers put down as a performance was, as our friend Wayne called it, who I watched the game with, absolute dog shit and the worst thing he's ever seen in his life. And I don't think it was that bad, but it was pretty fucking shocking. Glasgow started like a house on fire, and what's his name? Who's their number 10? Jordan. Ripped us to shreds. I mean, that guy found gaps every time he got the ball, and he is quick as a button.
You know, when you watch rugby in normal play, it's usually like pass, tackle, recycle, pass, tackle.
Yeah.
There was none of that. It was pass, break the line, run 50 meters, pass, break the line, run 50 meters the other way.
The Stormers were scrambling. I mean, to be fair, in the first half, they did punch back and they got themselves back into the game. But you almost got the feeling that if Glasgow got the ball in hand, like you said, it would take a maximum of 2 or 3 phases before they broke that line again. And it's a pity because the Stormers used to be what they prided themselves on most, was an iron defense. Just even 5 meters from the line, maybe 7 out of 10 times they'd stop the opposition. And now it's gone into almost like the opposite of, it's just sort of almost like touch rugby style throw around. Got so many creative players, and in order to give them this stage to perform and to show their creativity, it's fucking anarchy on the field. Like Oaks are throwing balls all kinds of ways, and some of the other players aren't good enough to anticipate that. But the biggest problem that I think the Stormers faced on the day is that their set piece play was not up to standard. Their scrum was good. They dominated Glasgow in the scrum, but their lineouts
were not.
Yes. And I was sitting there and I was just thinking to myself, this is not a new problem for the Stormers. Joseph Dweba has struggled throwing lineouts, and Fenter actually started.
Yeah.
And he struggled, I thought, even more. There were some times where he was throwing the ball straight to the opposition. And then there was once where he threw it to our opposition and the guy managed to chuck it to Glasgow's side. And I just thought to myself,
you're not doing yourself any favors.
No, and knockout rugby is all about doing your foundations well,
Exactly, yeah.
And for South African teams, that's good scrums, good lineouts, and kicking points when you have them on offer, And with Sasha playing, you actually had someone who could actually guarantee you those points. Yeah. And I just wished that there was a side to the Stormers that could adopt that sort of, you can play your expansive play when you're playing weaker teams in the round robin phase. But once you get to the knockout stages, you need to adapt your gameplay to be safer, because had they gotten their lineouts right, I think it could have been so much more of a close game, because every time we got a penalty, the decision was like, I don't know what to do, because if we kick for touch, there's like a 70% chance we're not getting the ball back. Yeah, so like there's taps and goes that are now being done, and there was no real option of how do we really make a positive change in this game.
You can play your expansive rugby once you have ascendancy
Exactly.
point-wise, but they were always chasing the 8-ball, so they're always behind the 8-ball, so that was never going to happen. Unfortunately for the Stormers, they also had 2 injuries
We had
pretty early on, so he lost Dan du Plessis, which meant you had to bring on Marnie and then shift Sasha around.
Hartzenberg came off late, and then eventually
late.
I don't know where Herschel Yankee was playing. I assume he was playing on the wing, and then like Sinatla was moving in or someone, but there was a lot of small guys on that
Didn't
field.
Marvin Ori also go off with an HIA or something like that?
No, what's his name? Not Marvin Ori. Who's our captain? Salman Murat.
Sorry.
He went. Yeah. I don't know where you got Marvin Ori from.
I was just reading about Marvin Ori this morning on Instagram. Someone Murat, yeah. So he got a HIA.
Exactly. So there's injuries involved. You're playing away from home, and Glasgow's. I was speaking to a friend, Knights, who was saying the Glasgow crowd is actually. They're buzzing, they're singing songs, they get behind their team. So the atmosphere was apparently great for Glasgow, and you could see that in the Glasgow players. There was a little bit of like edginess to the game. People were, when they were walking past each other, they were shoulder charging each other. There was spice in the game. And I mean, Glasgow knocked us out at the same position last year. So there might be like a little bit of a rivalry building there. But just to come back onto the lineouts, the thing that bothered me the most is that is something that you can practice.
Yes.
Hitting your mark on a line out is something you can work on at night when it's dark, and you just put those. I mean, they have those nets that come up, those lollipops, and I don't know. It's just that's where I sometimes envy teams that Jake White, for example, runs, is because they do those basics well first before they think of anything else. And I know it's considered boring, and it's considered like the dark side of South African rugby is that they just focus on like rolling mauls and scrums and stuff like that. But in knockout rugby, maybe that's what you need.
That is what you need.
That's what you need.
That's why the teams like the Bulls have been so successful.
Yeah, because then you can build a foundation of points that you're going to gather just because the other team is making mistakes, and then, like you said, then you can back out the back door pass and let Sasha try and sidestep. They kept him quiet very well, Glasgow. He didn't have a good game.
I mean, he didn't have a pack to build off of.
And, knockout rugby isn't maybe where his qualities will shine through the most in terms of having to be the sole game changer.
Yeah.
Because the other team is going to be psyched up to get him. And, you need those foundations to build off. So,
Evan Roos had a good game.
He did have a good game.
Where does that put him in the list of 8s for us?
He's still not on that list.
What do you base that?
I think that
off of
anyone else in that position is having a better season than him, and he's coming off maybe 2 good games, and because he's so young, I don't see an issue in the fact that he might have to wait another year before he gets a real chance at the Springboks. I think he's got a lot still to work on. You can still see he loses his head a little bit in the game. He's very emotional.
He's quite hot-headed, yeah.
Quite hot-headed. And that can serve you well if you channel it right.
Sure.
But if it just causes you to show ill discipline, to make you a little bit, to get you on the wrong side of the referee, that's not helping anyone. Because he's got such great qualities. When he gets the ball in hand, he makes barnstorming runs, and the hits that he puts in defense are so good. But unfortunately, there's probably 3 other guys ahead of him for the Springboks who are doing exactly the same and who have a few things that are doing better.
My one gripe with him, because I do agree with you, he does everything so well and he's so physical and so strong, is that I think because of that physicality that he brings with him, he sometimes runs himself into isolation instead of making the right decision of like passing it on in contact or getting your hands through or doing something like that. He'll go like, no, I think I can push these 3 defenders over the line.
Yeah.
And then you're on isolate himself, and then he gets jackaled.
And the referee in the Stormers match was very quick to blow for holding on. You could see that was something that he'd made a point of. He said, as soon as I see the oppositions have their hand over the ball, I'm blowing. There's no leeway there. Sinatla got an early yellow card in that game for a cynical foul. I thought the referee was very lenient in the first half on the other side, where I think there was a string of like 3 or 4 penalties before a word was even had with the captain of saying, listen, one more infringement and you're gone. I think he eventually did have a word, but if you're hoping for yellow cards as a way to win the game, then you're not in a good position. Stormers are gone. Let's go to the last and perhaps most contentious game of the quarterfinals. Sharks versus Munster in Durban.
I mean,
First of all,
the Lions. First of all, the Sharks are a pile of crap. First of all,
I opened because I didn't watch the whole game. I was following it on live score, and then eventually, because the Munster was cruising at one point, and I was like, Jesus, for you to have a Springbok-laden Sharks team to lose against Munster, who are not the Munster of last year or the previous year.
No.
They are like hit and miss with form.
Right.
And they played well, but you're at home and you're full of Springboks.
Yeah.
And that's the performance you put down. To be fair, they got it.
They got it over the line.
They got it to extra time. In extra time, they could not convert any of their opportunities.
No.
It's again, I don't know if it's becoming more and more, but like handling errors that I've watched this year with South African teams have been insane. I don't know if the passing's not accurate enough or
buttering up their fingers.
My Pimpy couldn't catch a cold in that extra time.
He's really struggling with his hands.
And then they finished extra time and they went to a penalty shootout.
Yeah.
And I suppose in that penalty shootout is where the
controversy happened.
The controversy lies. So it started out with...
Maybe explain how penalty shootout works.
So each team picks 3 kickers and they'll kick from sides of the field. So left side, middle, right side, and then it'll go through rounds where there'll be, I think, 20 meters
from the 22. Yeah.
From the 22, and then they'll move back to the
40.
To the 40, and if they're still even after that, they move back even further. But they didn't get to that. So it started out in the middle with Jaden Hendrikse against Jack Crowley.
Jack Crowley, yeah.
Jack Crowley.
I mean, I might be pronouncing it correctly.
I think you're right. And after Hendrikse made his kick, there was already words had. I think Hendrikse said something to Crowley that he didn't like, because when he then made his kick, you could see there was some afters. And the ref then at one point was like, leave it, and was pushing Hendrikse away. And then the Munster player on the, I guess, right side of the field, if you're looking at the post, missed his first kick. So that was where the Sharks got their lead. And then after that, it just continued with like what everyone would call gamesmanship or poor sportsmanship on side of the Sharks, because at his next kick, as soon as he kicked it, Jaden Hendrikse fell like a statue where he just kicked it from. And to be fair, in the pictures that have come out afterwards, you can see his calf is seized up. You can actually see the outlines of it. So I don't doubt that there was cramp. But the problem with the whole thing is one, where he fell, because he fell exactly where he'd kicked, meaning that when it was Crowley's turn to kick, he was in the way, and the ref was like, we've got to wait for this to stop. I'm going to give you all the time that you need. And then Jaden Hendrikse winked.
Yeah, and that wink got caught on camera.
At Crowley. And Crowley smiled and laughed, but this has now thrown apparently the whole of South African rugby into
disrepute.
Because if you look on social media, obviously certain parts of the world have been very quick to call us all scumbags.
Of course.
What do you think about it? That's not where it ended, by the way. There was more.
No, of course there was more. Because then afterwards he started fighting with the assistant.
The strength and conditioning coach was on, and he must have said something as well, because Crowley was upset with him.
And Crowley was telling him to fuck off.
And then there was the kicker on the right. I don't know who it was for Munster. He also had a word with the Sharks players standing there, because I think they were chirping him quite a lot as well. Okay. And I don't know how much of that is normal and how much isn't. Sorry. I'll just let you. What did you think of Jaden
Hendrikse's antics? I think, look, I also think the cramp is legit. I think he actually did have a cramp. As you said, you could see from the photos that there was something moving in his leg. Could he have maybe moved? Yes, I think so. Was it fortuitous that he sort of lay in the way? Yes.
He did that on purpose.
Of course.
He did that. He laid there on purpose. So it's just a question.
And I think it does, like, there is a bit of a psychological game there. We know from playing golf, if you have to wait for you to like play your next shot,
Slow,
like it
a
does
slow
eventually
player will, and that's what he went. To be fair, Crowley made the kick.
Crowley did make the kick, and I think in spite of the whole situation, it's kind of like well, F you, like I can actually do this even with you trying to play mind games. The whole wink thing, unnecessary. But I think that whilst he was lying there, they were also having words with each other. Yeah, and I think look, these guys are always chirping each other. Like even in the scrum, they chirp each other all the time. So it's not like it's an uncommon thing.
So I've heard, in reading about this afterwards, I've heard obviously Munster are no angels, and they're actually quite big on the smack talk and stuff like that.
We're talking about the Irish are always big on smack talk.
But it did leave a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth.
I agree.
I did not like seeing it.
I didn't like seeing it.
I don't think that you need to win that way. Or let's put it this way. I don't think your gamesmanship needs to be so elaborate that it turns into bad sportsmanship. Yeah. I think there's smaller things that you can do around that thing that sort of are not as blatant, that can lead to, that everyone will do, that will lead to the pressure being mounted more on one side or the other. And I just thought that it's sad that this is now what's come of it. On the other hand, I don't think that's why Munster lost, because of that whole situation.
Well, no, because they had missed the kick.
The other kicker had missed it. But you saw with what's his name? I just looked it up and I've already forgotten it again. Conor Murray.
Conor Murray, yeah.
As soon as, because there was a young scrum half who was kicking for the Sharks on the left.
Jacob Davids?
Yeah, something like that.
Something like that.
And when he walked up there, he shook his hand, he said good luck before the thing started. And that's sort of more of what I associate with rugby, is just sort of
respect.
It's a game of heavyweights, and you're going to take it out on each other physically to 100%. But when it's literally a skill thing at the end, it's completely about who's going to buckle under the pressure of the situation without there being any sort of like gamesmanship, bad sportsmanship from the opposition. There's a football player, David Luiz, who once winked at the opposition as well while he was feigning injury being down. Mm-hmm. And it just gave me
you lose legitimacy, right?
It just gave me immediate flashbacks to that because, so much is said about the difference between professionalism in rugby and football, soccer, and how professionals conduct themselves. And I'm not going to nail Jaden Hendrikse to the post for this, but I don't think you need to do it. I don't think it's necessary. I think you can win regardless. And if the other team is the one that displays poor sportsmanship, don't dip to that level and join them. Not that I'm saying that Munster maybe did, but there was definitely words that were said. Just, if they go low, you go high.
Yeah. Or just maintain.
And
the other thing that I saw a lot of comments being made on was the amount of booing that happens during
kicking,
penalty kicking in general. And I think that all of this has come from Irish fans, and they're like, "Oh, how dare you? And this is so disrespectful." Blah 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 blah. I think Ireland is the only nation in the world where there's absolute silence during kicking. No other nation does it, so it's not like it's an uncommon thing in our South Africans are bad sports. This is quite common.
I remember days watching Currie Cup and Super Rugby at Newlands when I was there, where there was silence even for the opposition, or like majority silence. There was some people shouting and stuff, but there was no large scale booing. But I think that's just, I don't know. I think that's left the game to a large scale, and that's down to the fans, and that's everywhere around the world. Like you said, that's a common problem. Also, to get 80,000 or 60 or 40,000 people to be quiet at the best of times is going to be good. And
try to get them quiet during like a moment of silence.
Yeah, exactly. So, I think that's a non-event for me.
Yeah,
the booing of the crowd, and that's not going to impact the players at all.
No, because they're used to that.
They're used to that, and they're used to that pressure. I think the stuff that happened on the field was worse. But let's leave that behind.
No, let's just look at the Sharks' next game, their next fixture, and how if their box laden team can actually do anything What is the problem with them?
It's their coaching.
It's the coaching.
It's the
right?
coaching, and
because you can't have that many good players
No.
and not perform.
No.
I mean, they essentially should be.
they
the
should be the
Leinster
Leinster
of
of South Africa. Yeah, they've got the majority of Springboks. They've got a great academy with young players coming through, and you're not. I can't accept that every one of them is out of form currently, and that it's not a coaching problem.
You know what the irony was? I was just thinking about this now. The coach of Munster is the ex-coach of the Sharks,
Who's he?
Sean Everett.
Oh,
So he coached the Sharks.
Yeah.
Also had a terrible run with them
this is the thing.
before Plumtree came in.
The problem also is who do you get? The nice thing about the Sharks is that they have the money to get a coach, maybe a South African coach that's currently coaching in the UK, because there's a few of them doing well, because they have the money to pay that salary. I have the same sort of issue with John Dobson at the Stormers. I don't know if he's the right man to win us titles anymore. I think he's done a great job, but I don't know if he can get us that step further. I mean, give him another season and see. But with Plumtree, it's unfortunately
the writing has to be on the wall.
Unfortunately, yeah, with that amount of money and that amount of pressure that comes with it, you need to be delivering more. They're going to be playing the Sharks at Loftus.
The Bulls at Loftus.
The Bulls at Loftus. I don't give them a chance against the Bulls, or not a realistic chance.
Neither do I.
If the Bulls play to their potential, I think the Bulls are going to win.
We also kind of need the Bulls to win because if
right,
they're going up against Leinster or Glasgow,
that brings us to our next thing.
It's the only team that I think from South Africa can actually go for the title.
Leinster play Glasgow in the other semi-final, and I must be honest with you, I think that might be tighter than we think. I think Glasgow coming off this win might give them a little bit of confidence. I think with it being in Dublin, I think Leinster should take it.
Remember, the interesting thing is the last time these two teams met up, Leinster swept them, was it 40-0?
True, yes.
Or 50-0?
Yeah.
I can't remember exactly what the score was.
Big one.
But it was a hiding.
Yeah.
So
there's a little bit
the
of
question is going to be, is Glasgow going to come back with a vengeance and be like, we need to prove a point about what happened last time? Or is Leinster going in with so much confidence and like, we know how to dismantle this team?
Yeah. Okay, good one to watch. Potential for a slip-up. But you would think that the final, if we were to go on form, will be Leinster versus the Bulls.
You would assume, yeah.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to be predicting.
That's what we'll be predicting. We've got plenty of time to talk about that when the time comes, about that final. It's going to be a good round of semi-finals this weekend.
Absolutely.
Maybe we even get the chance to watch them.
I don't see why not.
All right, lovely. I think that's it.
That's it for this week, yeah.
This week. Thank you very much. Tune into our What a Week. I think it's a good one this week. We talk about lots of things that happen in our lives.
Quite funny things as well.
Knee slappers at the best of time. So yeah, tune in, and thanks for tuning in this week.
If you like this video, give it a like, subscribe, and do all the good stuff. Cheers.
Bye.